Curtis and Son Funeral Home, Sylacauga, Childersburg. In obituary news this morning, Lucky Northcutt, age 72, of Sylacauga, died Wednesday. And a funeral service will be held on Saturday with a visitation from 12 until 2. That'll be at Childersburg Curtis and Son Funeral Home. And then a funeral service will occur at 2 o'clock with burial in the Green Hill Cemetery in Childersburg. Online condolences at curtisandsonfh.com. Curtis and Son Funeral Home, Childersburg Chapel, directing. Funeral service for Rodney Ray Allred, age 49, of Childersburg. That service will be on Saturday at First Pentecostal Church of Harpersville. The visitation will be from 11 to 2 with a service at 2. Burial in the Harpersville Cemetery. Curtis and Son Funeral Home, Childersburg Chapel, directing that service. And funeral service for Mr. Hubert Gentry will be today at 1 p.m. from Curtis and Son North, with burial in the Mount Olive Cemetery in Talladega. Curtis and Son Funeral Home, North Chapel, directing that service. And funeral service for Ella Hutto will also be today at 1 o'clock from Childersburg Chapel. Visitation from 1 until 2. The service at 2 is a graveside service over at Old Childersburg Cemetery. Curtis and Son Funeral Home, Childersburg Chapel, in charge of the arrangements. In other obituary news this morning, remembering the life of Mr. Robert Pointer Jr., age 65. That service Saturday at 1:30 from S.M. Goodson Funeral Home Chapel with the Reverend Matthew Leonard officiating. Interment in the Antioch Church Cemetery. There will be a wake for Mr. Pointer Friday from 5 to 8 o'clock at the funeral home, S.M. Goodson Funeral Home, Talladega, directing. Remembering the life of Mr. Eugene Smith, age 69, of Talladega, will be Saturday at noon from S.M. Goodson Funeral Home Chapel, with Prophetess Lisa A. Simmons officiating and Marita Lett delivering the words of comfort. Public viewing for Mr. Smith Saturday from 9 a.m. until noon prior to the service at the funeral home, S.M. Goodson Funeral Home in Talladega, directing. Mr. Danny Tom Tilley. Funeral service for Mr. Tilley is entrusted to Grace Memorial Chapel Funeral Home in Sylacauga. He was in a ministry under the tutelage of Apostle Frizzell Lane, the Move of God Bible Way Deliverance Tabernacle in Talladega. Visitation will be held today from 1 until 4 at the funeral home. Celebration of Life will be Saturday at 1 p.m. at Harpersville Cemetery. The visitation will be held at Grace Memorial Chapel in Sylacauga. Vanessa Wilson, age 66, died December 30th. Community Funeral Home in Sylacauga, announcing. Online condolences at communityfuneralhome.org. Visitation for Mr. Marte LaShawn Bradford, age 43, of Goodwater, be Friday from 4 till 7 at the funeral home. Visitation will be at the Pleasant Home Baptist Church in Goodwater from noon until service time at 2:30. Funeral service is private. Armour's Memorial Funeral Home will direct that service. And funeral service will be private for Mr. Kenneth Lee Maxwell. There will be a visitation Friday from 4 until 7 at the funeral home. Burial in the Armour's Memorial Garden, Armour's Memorial Funeral Home, directing. Remembering the life of Mr. Cecil Paul Adair Jr., age 21, of Talladega. That'll be today at 1:30 from S.M. Goodson Funeral Home Chapel, with Pastor Clarence Henderson officiating. Kenneth Stamp will deliver the words of comfort. S.M. Goodson Funeral Home, directing. And Mr. James Carthel Bullock, age 86, of Lincoln, died on December 26. Graveside service will be at Blue Eye Cemetery on Sunday in Lincoln at 2 o'clock with Bill Butterworth officiating and Pastor Randy Howell officiating. So it'll be Mr. Bill Butterworth and Pastor Randy Howell officiating that service. Kilgore Funeral Home in Pell City in charge of the arrangements. These obituaries this morning, courtesy of Curtis & Son Funeral Home, the North Chapel on Highway 21 in Sylacauga, and the Childersburg Chapel on Highway 280 in Childersburg for pre-need funerals, burials, and cremation since 1975. Curtis & Son Funeral Home, Sylacauga, Childersburg.